Welcome once again to Cinemaholics, where we review the biggest and best films coming to theaters and streaming online. We're not just fans, we're not just critics, we are Cinemaholics. I'm your host, John Negroni from the Internet California, and on the show today, we have from the Internet Pennsylvania. He's a pop culture writer for Cinema Blend, but he also writes about life itself on Twitter. It's Will Ashton.
Oh, I see what you did there.
That's right. We're talking about life itself later in the show.
Eventually, yeah.
And from the broadband basement, he is our sound producer and casual moviegoer with a heart of fool's gold. It's Soundmaster Maverick Hines.
A heart of fool's gold. All right.
Yeah, you like that one. I was kind of expecting like yelling, screaming.
I'm too tired to scream.
This week we have our regular rapstallion, Maverick Hines, on the
show. No, Will Ashton, you were supposed to be the bad boy of the group, remember?
Oh, I see. Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so this week we are reviewing The House with a Clock in Its Walls, directed by Eli Roth. That's going to be our feature review today. In mini reviews, we've got quite a few exciting movies to talk about. Will has there's a movie Will's going to be talking about called Mandy that I cannot wait to hear your thoughts on. We're also going to be talking Assassination Nation, Life Itself, and maybe a couple other surprises here and there. But we're going to start off with off topics first. Our first one, our Q&A episode is finally coming out. We waited because we have a crossover episode with Anyway, That's All I Got. So your Cinemaholics feed may have put out a franchise breakdown of the Predator franchise. The Predator movies, said franchise twice. So that's Anyway, That's All I Got. That's our spin-off podcast hosted by Sam Noland. Enjoy the episode. Those guys had a blast talking about all of the Predator movies, even the AVP ones. And there was this really spirited debate in the early goings between two of the hosts about whether or not the first Predator, there was just a lot of disagreement over how good that movie is. I thought it was pretty fascinating. So that's out right now, and you can check it out. Also, our Q&A episode is coming out this week, so you're going to be hearing us answer all of your questions. That also is a really fun episode that Sam Nolan was on as well, and we should be releasing that in the next couple of days, depending on when you're listening to this. Speaking of, so we now have our own YouTube channel. So if you prefer listening to Cinemaholics with YouTube, we got great news for you. Cinemaholics is now on YouTube. You can go check that out and subscribe. We're going to be putting full episodes on there. Plus, we decided, it's YouTube, so we have a chance to kind of do excerpts of episodes. So one of the first ones we put out was an excerpt of Will Ashton reviewing The Snowman from an episode we did last October. It was our Only the Brave episode, and it's just 10 minutes of Will Ashton talking about The Snowman, that movie with Michael Fassbender. And Will, you re-listened to that episode, and what did you think hearing it back?
I don't know. I mean, I thought I was angrier when I recorded it, but I guess I was just more confused as to how that was a movie that had all these talented people.
Yeah, you sounded baffled.
Yeah, it was an interesting look back, certainly, and I hope people enjoy listening to that little ramble of mine.
It is pretty good. It's a good breakdown. It was a good review. Okay, also we want to thank our latest patron, Francisco. Thank you for donating to Cinemaholics. If you want to be a patron of Cinemaholics, just check out the show notes, and you can see a link right there to our Patreon, and you can get cool stuff that way. Also, we have a new bonus episode series coming out. So really excited to announce this. We are trying to do more interviews. We're trying to do more conversations with guests. It's very difficult because of scheduling. So one thing that we decided to start trying to do is what we're calling for now, happy hour. Cinemaholics happy hour is roughly an hour conversation where just one of us talks to a really cool guest. So our first happy hour episode is going to be our bonus for next week. So after the Q&A episode, we'll talk more about that next week on our next to let you know what we're doing for that. But it's a really good conversation that I had with Alicia Grosso, and so you're going to want to stick around for that. And we want to do all kinds of fun things. We really want to have Will Ashton sit down with Nicolas Cage and talk about Nicolas Cage. Yeah. That is our most important episode we want to do yet.
I just like the idea we have a conversation at the end. We're just we were recording. Oh, good. Well, you guys can hear all about it. So hopefully that happens one day.
It's only a matter of time. I think it's going to be fun. We also have a review that I want to read real quick. This one comes to us from DeWitt, who left us a review on Omni FM. So I want to read it, and I sent it to you guys earlier. We haven't talked much about this, about these thoughts, but okay. So the review says, superb but subjective. which I really appreciate. I think that's a good two words to put together. I cannot believe I'm saying this, but I look forward to Monday when I can hear this podcast. It is well thought and articulate. The thing that makes this podcast different is it's got different views from different kinds of people. Will, the critic who doesn't give in to popular obsession and tell you exactly what's on his mind, whether you love it or not. John, all-around movie fan, who's mostly optimistic about movies and tries to find beauty even in the worst ones. Maverick, I had to copy that from the description, I think, to spell your name correctly. But you nailed it, do it. The non-movie goer with a little knowledge about movies, who's just learning about movies, I suppose. Now let's talk specifics. The reason that led me to say it's subjective, I guess. Art as a whole is subjective, and I might hate what everybody seems to love. But after hearing you guys tear Ozark to pieces, which I don't think we really did, I just think that I was kind of mean to Ozark and nobody really responded.
Yeah. I just said, like, hey, I heard it's a good show. And you're like, no, I don't think it's a good show.
Right. And Maverick wasn't even there. I thought, he goes on to say, I thought we shouldn't agree on all things, as is frequently witnessed between John and Will. I love how they take comments seriously and continuously try to improve themselves. I also love how they break a movie and examine the characters, the cinematography, the script, the cast, and all of their things. And it's refreshing to hear their views on the featured reviews. I also love their news segment and movies coming up next week. What I do not like, here we go, here's the fun stuff.
Okay.
I know they have to remain unbiased, but sometimes it doesn't hurt to hear them rate a movie A or A+, especially Will Ashton, whose ratings never pass mostly C or B, which personally, Will, I consider this a feature, not a bug, but that's just me.
Well, yeah, I have an answer for this, but keep going.
We'll finish it. Yeah, maybe there hasn't been a good movie in these 2 years, but I have yet to hear them praise the movie and give it an A. I'm personally not fond of the rushed conversations, usually toward the end. I don't know if they have a time limit or something, but it's never quite fun to hear them brushing up topics that deserve more time. Maybe it's a time management issue, but I've seen some of the podcasts stretch to nearly 2 hours. So either give it the time it requires or don't bring it up at all. That being said, and then it goes on to say, being a patron of the podcast, do it. Thanks for writing us. Like, yeah, I want to bring that up and say, like, nobody has to be a patron. Nobody has to donate. Like, we're just glad you're listening. And if you have the means and it doesn't, it doesn't infringe on your life to support us, then we welcome that. But yeah, it's definitely 100% optional. But you had a response, Will Ash.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, well, for one, I mean, the grades are fairly subjective. I mean, I would say it's more about our conversation, our thoughts on the film that I'm concerned about. I wouldn't focus too much on the grades themselves. But that said, I mean, I'm not really like a school teacher. Like, when I give A's, they're very few and far between. Like, not talking A minuses, like straight A's or A pluses. Or, in my opinion, I like this, like, keep those to a good degree because I feel like they really have to earn it, in my view. Like, they have to, like, warrant something more than just, like, I really, really like this film, or I don't know. And sometimes, I mean, there are movies I give an A minus at first. I turn around and give an A. I mean, I think Swiss Army Man's an example of that, but I don't think we ever talked about that one on the podcast. So, I mean, I'm trying to think if there was an example last year, but I can't think of one off the top of my head. But yeah, it really just kind of fluctuates by the nature of how I feel about a film given time, or just where I am in that point in my life. But yeah, I would say just don't focus too much on the grades, but also stay tuned, because that might change later this episode.
That's right. And then I would say too, in terms of time management, sometimes it really just comes down to, we got schedules, we got things going on, and we don't want to ramble on and on too much, but totally hear you. Hopefully we manage to do a good job of not just brushing up topics too quickly, but we definitely want to just be respectful of people's time. And
yeah,
we don't want people to look at the timestamps and be super intimidated. That said, though, we do our best to, like, separate all of our chapters out. So if you're listening to Cinemaholics and it feels like a very long episode, you can always check out the show notes. You can always check out the chapter markers and go right to what you want to listen to. But of course, we encourage you to listen to the stream of consciousness of it all. I think listening to it linearly is fun as well. But
yeah, I'm encouraged that he wants to hear us talk more. I figure most people want us to talk less. So
he's gonna love our happy hour episodes.
Sure.
The one I did yesterday was quite something else. That's a fun one, but we'll talk about that later. Last thing before we move on to our featured review, stick around for our movies coming up next week segment. Speaking of which, toward the end of this episode, because we kind of have an interesting idea for what to feature review next week. And we're going to need your input, as always. And also on that note, thank you all of our patrons who helped us decide what we're reviewing this week. So That is another perk of being a patron. We put out a poll, and the patrons voted on which movie they wanted us to feature review. It was between The House with a Clock in Its Walls and Life Itself. I think Maverick Hines, I don't know if you're going to thank people for picking House with a Clock in Its Walls over Life Itself. Maybe we'll find out maybe in a second. You're grinning here. But yeah, thanks again for voting in that. And with that, let's get right into our featured review of The House with a Clock in Its Walls. This is a new wide release from Universal. It's directed by horror filmmaker Eli Roth, surprisingly enough, in his first kind of family film, basically.
Yeah, it's his first movie that's not a very hard R.
Exactly,
Working on NC-17, yeah.
He's best known for films Cabin Fever, the first two Hostel movies, The Green Inferno, Knock Knock, and Death Wish remake, which came out just this past year.
Yeah.
I don't like any of his movies except for the first Hostel. But that's just me. The screenplay is written by Eric Kripke, and it's based on a children's classic book written by John Bellairs that was illustrated by Edward Gorey, very famous illustrator. Like I said, it's an adaptation of this kind of like horror book that was kind of like Harry Potter before Harry Potter ever came out. This was like the 70s. And it's kind of like a magical horror adventure, and it does kind of have like some of that Spielberg-y. It's produced by Amblin Entertainment, with the main character's name is Lewis. He's played by Owen Vaccaro, a 10-year-old who has to go live with his uncle and his uncle's best friend, Jack Black and Cate Blanchett, and then also in this film, Kyle MacLachlan in an interesting role. So, with that said, Will Ashton, what did you think of The House with a Clock in Its Walls?
Yeah, so I don't have a lot of warm feelings towards Eli Roth's filmography like you. I think the only one I really had any enjoyment for was Cabin Fever. And I kind of like that as like a fun, schlocky take, sort of in the vein of his inspirations being Peter Jackson's Dead Alive and Sam Raimi's Evil Dead. It was kind of like a mix of that, but a little cheekier and a little like kind of wilder. And it's not a good film, I don't think, but it's fun. It's
definitely not his worst.
Yeah, and I don't know. I wasn't crazy about the Hostel films or The Green Inferno or Knock Knock. Was, I guess, a little better, but not quite that good.
Knock
better than Green Inferno.
It is better than Green Inferno. Knock Knock does have one of the best monologues in any of his films.
Yeah, I mean, I do think, for what it's worth, I think Knock Knock was at least a little ahead of its time. I'll give it that. And I do like that Keanu Reeves gave a performance that's kind of out of his normal wheelhouse. Mm-hmm. But yeah, no, I mean, I do know there's a lot of people who say that's like one of the worst movies ever. It's not good. I don't know if I'd go that far though. But yeah, and then Death Wish, the remake, I thought was just terrible. That's probably in my bottom 5 for the end of the year right now, as far as 2018 movies are concerned. So yeah, I don't know, but I was actually kind of excited for House with a Clock in Its Walls, not on its walls. I keep wanting to call it House with a Clock on Its Walls, but yeah, I was actually kind of digging the first trailer. I thought it had that fun ambient vibe that I've enjoyed, and I mean, I wasn't crazy about the Goosebumps adaptation from a couple years ago, so when I saw this trailer, I was like, oh, okay, this actually might be what I wanted that film to be, kind of like a spooky horror light movie, like an introductory horror film for younger audiences that would kind of get them, in the Halloween spirit and have some fun, spirited performances from Jack Black and Cate Blanchett. And I did think I got those spirited performances. I do enjoy Jack Black and Cate Blanchett in this film. I think they have a good kind of wry chemistry together. Or weird, or I don't know what the word is exactly I'm trying to say, but like they have a kind of like a prickly kind of chemistry together that I actually enjoyed more than I did. And I wish they were in the movie together more than our central lead, who I don't know how I really feel about the main kid, Owen something. I think his character's name is Lewis, but
yeah,
he's okay, I guess, but he doesn't. He only occasionally captures that sense of wonder that I feel is central to this performance or central to this movie, is being like full of this magic and wonder. And that's the weird thing about this movie, is that I feel like it was kind of missing that magic a lot. Like there's a lot of magic on screen, but there, like, it feels kind of, like a clock, very clockwork, like very mechanical in its approach, in a way that I found kind of distracting. Like, I don't know, there's something about like the earlier like Goonies and E.T. and like Gremlins, like there's like that kind of extra magic to it where
there's a texture to it.
Yeah, I mean, they have that sense of danger, but there's also that playfulness. But it feels organic. Like it feels like it kind of just happens in that moment. And this movie, it felt very like like they had like this checklist where they needed to like accomplish all this stuff. And I guess they checked out the things, but it didn't really feel organic in that way that needed to be. It needed to be to feel magical. And ultimately, I didn't hate it, but it did leave me fairly underwhelmed.
Yeah, we should say, I mean, it's not strictly like a young adult, like YA kind of film, but at times it does feel like that, yeah. I think this film's biggest problem is Owen Vaccaro, unfortunately. I just don't think that actor...
Knocking down the 11-year-old.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just don't think that performance works. Like, I don't think it's there. A big reason why the movie doesn't work, I think, is because you have Jack Black, you have Cate Blanchett, who every moment with them is gold. I mean, you just kind of like, they sell it. They know the movie they're in, and it's like, I don't know. They when you have such like good chemistry between those two characters, and then it doesn't happen in your lead, it made me think a lot about like how Daniel Radcliffe and Harry Potter, you were able to like really instantly connect with that character. Like, you just really, like, you feel the fact that he's an orphan in a situation where you feel for him and you empathize with him. But there's just something, I don't know if it's the writing, I don't know if it's the performance, I don't know if it's the way that Eli Roth directs kids. But then you look at the other character who plays Tarby, that's Sonny Solchik, who is in the film Mid-90s. He stars in that. That's getting some good reviews. And then he was also Bob in Killing of a Sacred Deer. And
Oh, yeah.
you see him, and like, there's like an effortless performance going on with him that with some better writing could have been like one of the more interesting things about this movie is like the dynamic between him and Lewis. But at moments throughout this film, I was like, man, why can't he be the main character? I almost kind of wish we were seeing this from his perspective. And actually, this movie, weirdly enough, made me more excited to see Mid-90s, which I know, Will, you've been kind of curious, like, why I haven't been as sold on Mid-90s, but I also haven't been very sold on this film. Like, the marketing for it did not work on me at all. I will say, though, Will Ashton, to your credit, I think this was a little bit better than I was expecting. Maybe my expectations were so low because of the marketing. I didn't outright hate this or anything, and I think I'm a little bit closer to where you're at. But Maverick Hines, you bared this with me. We saw this, was it IMAX or Dolby?
IMAX, yeah.
Yeah. So we got to see it on a pretty cool screen. Did that help it? What was the experience for you? Do you love it? Is it your favorite movie?
Yeah, I mean, you got me all summed up. I don't think I need to say anything. A+. Have a good week, guys. I'll see you next week.
That's right.
No, I think I had, like, I wouldn't say I had the highest expectations in the world, but like, I was kind of excited to see it. It looked fun, and I think I'm more in line with Will in that regard. Where like,
You like getting spooked.
I like spooky movies, and it looked like it was going to be a fun kind of whatever. I wasn't expecting like best movie of the year or anything like that, but I thought I was going to have fun with it, and I think everything you guys have said so far has been pretty right on. The lead was just not doing it. Like, the emotional scenes for him just didn't carry for me because they felt so fake.
Whenever he cried, I was like, the first dark part of me, I was like, you deserve to be bullied, dude.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, whatever happens at school to you tomorrow.
That's why I feel bad for that, Will. I don't feel proud of this emotion that I'm feeling right now.
I just want to say that on Cinemaholics, we don't encourage bullying. I think we need to make that disclaimer.
Well, let's clarify even more. Will and I do not endorse bullying.
Yeah.
John Negroni is pro
bullying.
I'm sorry, everyone. I would like to take this moment to thank my family for standing by me in this difficult time.
Yeah. Well, it was fun doing Cinemaholics.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry. So yeah, I that for me, like, the first moment that he shows any emotion and is like crying and stuff, it felt like a weird joke. Like, I was like, oh, he's gonna stop and start laughing like he was messing with Jack Black, because it felt so fake. And it's just, I don't know, it was hard for me to kind of be invested. And whenever like he was just on screen kind of carrying the plot, I did not care, right? Like, I think you guys said it with Cate Blanchett and Jack Black. They had great chemistry, and like, I love Jack Black. He's a funny guy, and he has a really good energy, and I think he was a good casting for this kind of character. Like, I think him interacting with Blanchett in the house was really entertaining, and like, he was perfect for this kind of like wonky half warlock guy.
It works way better than him as R.L. Stein.
For sure. Yeah,
he was way miscast, I thought, as R.L. Stein, and I think that's one of the biggest reasons why I felt that movie didn't work. Even though I know a lot of people like that movie, but for me, it wasn't that good.
Yeah, and then Blanchett's the same thing. I think she was a good support for him, and she was good on her own as well. She's a really strong, intelligent witch lady. So I had a lot of enjoyment for times that they were on screen, but other than that, I wasn't super sold on the movie.
Yeah, It's a weird one because there are things I like in it. I think like the original story, I've never read it, but you see like there is good world building behind it. I think that the idea of like your magic is personal to who you are, and the writing for this character Lewis, it's there. Like I think the idea that like he's obsessed with like dictionaries and words, like of course a writer came up with this character, right? But there's something to that, and they find there are clever ways to like make magic work in this world that don't feel too like they don't really encumber anything. I think there are just some mishaps with like a lot of the execution, like how things get set up and how they get paid off. A lot of it is just sort of brushed aside. I think that there is just like this weird artificialness to it, especially to like the way that he picks up magic so quickly. Like on the one hand, I get it. Like I get why he should be so good at it so quickly, but it does sort of feel like what's his struggle? Like what's his, like, what does he have to learn in the end? Like some of the character arcs felt a little incomplete because it's almost like they set up so much in the second act because they're like, okay, and then we're going to do like a few more movies. And that's when we're really going to get the ball rolling, everybody. And who knows, maybe that'll happen. I think that the box office for this is looking to be kind of strong. I mean, not amazing, but it could be a kind of a humble franchise moving forward. But in regards to all of that, what are things you like, Will? I mean, what are things that did kind of click for you?
Well, I did enjoy the general production design of the house. I mean, I was actually kind of hoping there'd be more time with like the Pee Wee Herman-esque nature of the couch being alive and just the like puppets. Things kind of. Yeah, just things that like I thought that stuff was very fun. I enjoyed all that kind of stuff. It added to the kind of playful horror angle that was going on throughout. And I mean, I did enjoy the climax for what it was. I mean, I think it did have a good energy and mojo to it that was, enjoyable to watch. I just kind of wish the build up to it was more redeemable, I guess. But
yeah, and they actually used the MacGuffin to sort of one thing I did appreciate. Sorry to cut you. The idea behind the villains being like they didn't make the villains like this all powerful thing. It really was more about like outsmarting and like, oh, we got to find the clock in the wall, and it was a little bit less like you never like bought for a second that the Jack Black and Cate Blanchett characters were like super weak for no good reason. Like there weren't like plot contrivances like that. So I give the movie credit for its third act kind of being somewhat elegant.
And I will say, I mean, I don't know how I feel about it necessarily, but I do enjoy that in a very sort of 80s, 90s way. The ending gets really weird in a way that's like fairly unapologetic about it. Yeah,
there's
like,
some... Whoa.
Something happens with Jack Black's character that like, I don't know how I feel about it necessarily, but I'm kind of glad they went that angle just because it's just weird enough where it's like, all right, I'm glad you guys like had bored me about this. Like, no, we're gonna have this happen.
Well, not even just that. I was thinking of the flashback involving one of the villain characters. There's a moment where I was like, "This isn't a kids' movie." And I was kind of
Satanism
like that
in this movie.
Yeah, a little bit
outright Satanism.
Which we should say, like, that's why I don't think. I think if you're like 9 and up, sure, this movie's fine for 9-year-olds. Like it's like you mentioned, like Goonies and Gremlins, like. Kids can handle a little dark, but definitely not like younger than that. I think like a 6-year-old, 5-year-olds, like that would really disturb them probably.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really find it that creepy in the way that I think Goonies is fairly creepy on its own. Even like as I watch it now, I mean, I haven't seen it in a while, but from even just like revisiting clips, I still think that movie is fairly creepy. But
a little spooked during the Goonies there, Will?
Sure, yeah. But no, I was gonna say, I mean, I do, like I was saying before, I think if you want to kind of get an introduction to horror and you're at a fairly young age, I think this movie is, a good way to kind of ease your way into it. Like it's a good, it's like a good, third grader slumber party horror type of movie.
Very tween,
Yeah.
It's the Rugrats all grown up characters watching and thinking it's very mature, sure.
Are they like teenagers in that show?
No, they're like 11, something like that.
Really?
Yeah. Will Ashton, this is my childhood we're talking about. I got the details, I got the receipts.
But all right, boring, so I didn't watch it.
Oh yeah, it was probably boring to you because you just weren't ready for it.
Damn. Well, Rugrats is funny. I mean, I just remember they were like just having whatever. This is way off topic.
That's a good happy hour for another day. There are certain seasons of that show that were groundbreaking. But anyway, House with a Clock in Its Walls. Let's give our final thoughts and grades. Starting with you, Maverick Hines.
Wow, put me on the spot.
Yeah.
No, I think we explained it well. I don't want to ramble on too much about the movie. I do think it has some merit as, a decently fun movie-going experience for, taking a younger spook enthusiast out for a fun time. It's a visually appealing movie, and like I said before, I think Jack Black and Cate Blanchett do a great job carrying it. For me, it's a B-.
A B-?
Yeah, it's a B-.
Oh, wow.
And okay, cool. Yeah, I'm not quite at B-. I'm more of a C+ on this one. I don't think that it has like a big enough net for me to like wholeheartedly recommend it as a somewhat solid movie. I don't know. I guess a lot of people will just find it very boring, and I just knock this movie quite a lot for the way it directs children. And there is one thing that I'm kind of split about. Like on the one hand, I'm like, oh, that's cool for kids to see. Like I know it's the 50s, but it is one thing for kids to see sort of like a racially diverse school in like, middle America. But on the other hand, I'm just like, how historically whitewashed is this, or disingenuous is this, that like white and black students like aren't dealing with segregation and like things like that. It's a small thing. I get it. I get why the studio does it, but it does feel a little bit of like historical revisionism to me. And I know some people will be like, it's a movie. I don't know. It's one of those like historical details that really just irks me for some reason, because it does sort of, and it's complicated. It's not me being mad or anything, because I do like the idea of like kids seeing what their schools look like just in the 50s, and that is what like a modern school looks like. So I'm conflicted, and it's nuanced, and that's all I'm going to say. C+. Will Ashton.
Okay.
Sorry for dropping that bomb.
Yeah, I was gonna say, as far as Eli Roth, I'm happy that he is jumping into something that's like out of his comfort zone. I do think, for the most part, I mean, as far as like toning down his normal like kind of like schlock kind of angle, I think he did that fine. I just wish the movie itself was less clunky and a little more organic with his magic. I don't know if it just needed a new lead, or if it kind of needed to be better paced, because there's a lot of stuff in here that feels rushed, and then a lot of stuff that feels dragged out. And I felt that was kind of weird. Like the stuff that should have been like dragged out was rushed, and the stuff that should have been kind of tightly wound was a little more drawn out, which I found kind of odd. But as it stands, yeah, it's like a close but no cigar film. There's a lot of stuff in here I do think works, and there's a lot of stuff here that could have been better, but it just kind of fell short of what it could have been. It's a shame. I was actually looking forward to this, and I'm bummed that it didn't really live up to my expectations. But I do think there's an audience for it. And I do think that for a younger audience, it'll probably appeal to them, just being what it is, like Harry Potter light or Goosebumps light or whatever, however you want to describe it. So, yeah, I also give it a C+.
Yeah, definitely not the train wreck that I was kind of anticipating. So I'm glad to be wrong on this one. It's a little bit, it's better than that, and glad to see it. I'm glad it wasn't. I haven't seen anybody outright hate this film, and I've seen some people like genuinely really get a kick out of it. So glad to see that. But okay, that was a very lean featured review, gentlemen. I feel like we really covered it without missing anything crucial or important. But that's good, because we have some really epic mini reviews coming right now. So I want to start with you, Will, for our first mini review. Let's just get it out of the way. You saw Mandy, and I have a feeling you kind of liked it. What's it about?
Yeah, I mean, this was a movie that was on my fall movie preview, fairly high up. For good reason, too. I mean, ever since I first heard about this from Sundance and Alex Billington was talking about it, I just knew this is going to be my type of movie. So I should explain. It's sort of like an ambient 80s-esque horror thriller revenge vigilante kind of film with Nicolas Cage at the center, where he is this woodsman who lives out like in this cabin away from society with his girlfriend. They're like very metal, just kind of doing their own thing, living peacefully and harmoniously in their own seclusion. And there's this like Charles Manson-esque cult going on the outskirts of town, and they find something in Nicolas Cage's girlfriend, played by Andrea. Oh, how do you pronounce her last name?
Riseborough.
There you go. Who is like a chameleon. I feel like every movie she looks like completely different, and she really blends into her character as well. That's a real testament to how good of an actress I think she is. Yeah, they see something in her, and they really want her to kind of be ingrained into this cult. And so they kidnap her in the dead of night, and she rejects their notions, and some very tragic stuff happens. And Nicolas Cage feels he is taken to this point of pure vigilant anger, to the point where he gets all these weapons and basically just goes out and seeks his revenge. And I won't say more than that, because I don't think the movie necessarily like breaks new ground as far as what it's accomplishing. I think you've probably seen one or two films like it, even though it does go in quite a few directions that I don't think people are going to expect, no matter how primed they are about the film. But this is just one of those movies where I just wanted it to be so good, and I was kind of, throughout the whole time, I was expecting it to go sour. Like, I was expecting something just not to quite work, like something might go wrong, or it wouldn't really suit my fancy, or just it wouldn't click. And I never got that moment. I think everything about this was exactly what the movie should have been, and exactly what I wanted it to be. And it was this rare kind of like, oh, this is like, it lived up to my expectations, and I was thoroughly engrossed, hypnotized, enchanted, whatever the word might be, by it. Because it does, this movie, like, unlike House of the Clock Guns, while it does have this kind of magical spell on you, it kind of, if you see it on the big screen especially, and I'm looking forward to seeing it on the big screen, but if you just watch it like at the dead of night at home, it has this like kind of cool wavelength. If you're on it, and it just absorbs you, and it's a magnetizing little movie, and I don't know if it's going to work for everyone. It's going to be, I don't know, some people don't really dig the first half because they think it's too slow and prodding and whatever. I thought it was a perfect counterbalance to what the second half is, which is like what you kind of expect from Nicolas Cage on a Rampage movie. But I think it earns that. I think it really does a great job of showcasing how versatile Nicolas Cage can be as an actor. And I think that's one thing that, especially today, I think gets overlooked, is that Nicolas Cage, I mean, I don't know if I feel comfortable saying he's a great actor, but I definitely think he's a very good one who can be a great actor. And this is, I would think, is one of his best performances. It's a movie that's perfectly catered to him, and he makes the most of it. There's a scene in the bathroom where he kind of reconciles with what happens, this very traumatic moment. That is, I would say, like, it deserves to be in his like clip reel for like best acting in his career. He like goes from like these emotions of like shock to like grief to anger to frustration to like deep sadness, and it's all in one take. And it's really just, it's an amazing piece of acting, and I feel like so many people are just gonna like take that for granted, and I hope they don't. But as it stands, I would 100% recommend people see this film. Even if you don't think it's going to be your type of thing, I would at least give it a shot. It's not too graphic, but it does get pretty gnarly, and I love that. But I know some people might be a little turned off by that, and that's fine. But as it stands, I mean, this is the most metal movie I've seen since Deathgasm, and I would say it's probably the best like action thriller of its kind since Mad Max Fury Road, and I don't make those comparisons lightly. So our listener was saying, why don't I give A ratings? This is it. This is my A. So
first
there
of
you go,
2018, huh?
And Cinemaholics history.
Oh, wow. You didn't, I guess that's right. You gave Brigsby Bear an A-.
Yeah, so yeah, this is an A. I'm looking forward to see it again, see if it earns that, but as it stands right now, I think this movie is a masterpiece. I really think it accomplishes everything it sets out to do, and I really have no complaints about it. Wow. So I'm really looking forward. I hope I don't hype you guys up too much, but I really do.
I've been waiting to see it because I want to see it with Maverick.
I want to see it. It looks really good.
Yeah, and the cool thing about Mandy is like I've heard like if you can see it on a big screen, if you can see it in a theater, definitely do that as soon as possible. Yeah, it's not really playing around here yet.
Is it playing around here?
No, but it is streaming on demand, so might be checking that out in the meantime. And if we really dig it, hopefully I would go see it maybe a second time.
And before I forget, Johan Johansson's score is really, really good, and I feel it's such a loss that he passed away just when this movie premiered, but I do think this might be his best. And I'm not saying it's because it's his last. I do think, looking at all of his other scores, as good as they are, this one I think is maybe his his swan song in the absolute best way. Like he went out on a very high note.
Well, you're not alone, Will Ashton. This movie has a 93% on Rotten Tomatoes. Pretty good average rating too, 7.5 out of 10. Just pretty good for Rotten Tomatoes out of 116 reviews, and Metacritic, it has an 82. Again, very, very good so far. That's enough to earn it a universal acclaim.
Yeah,
and everything I've read about the film really is echoing a lot of what you're saying.
I hope you like it. I mean, like I said, I would be really bummed if you guys were to set up too high by expectations that you found yourself disappointed. But I don't know. I had like the highest of expectations for this movie, and I thought they lived up or exceeded them. So
you can't really precondition somebody for being spellbound for a film or being like cage bound, I guess, in this case. Some of our favorite films, like I know for sure, like I'll be like, man, I can't believe you like this so much. For me, that like Spellbound movie was probably You Were Never Really Here. That was my equivalent of like I was in that movie's wavelength 100%. I couldn't like escape it. Like I still like I look back on that movie going experience and like I was in like a daze. And like when that happens, it's a special thing. It's a very cool thing. It's one of my favorite things about going to see movies is just for the chance to have that very specific, unique experience. And it's not something that happens to everybody, because sometimes people don't go see a lot of movies and sometimes they miss out on these experiences. And then other people who aren't even the biggest film fans of all time or anything, they become like lifelong cinemaphiles because maybe they have that experience a couple of times as they're young, or maybe it happens later in life, who knows. And so what I'm hearing from you, Will, is there is a high chance that a lot of people listening can have that experience with this movie, assuming you are of age to attend this screening. She should probably say it, I guess. But okay, that's Mandy. That's an A from Will Ashton. We should probably play some music or something around this part. I don't have any, but it's probably
yeah. I mean, I agree 100% with what you said. I mean, that is the magic of the movies. Like, you don't get that experience every day, but when you get that, you are reminded why you go to the movies, or why we do a podcast like this once a week, because it's truly magical. And I really do hope a lot of people get the same experience from this movie as I did. So check it out if it's playing near you, or if not, check it out on VOD.
Well, our next movie is one that Will and I saw this past weekend. And this one is definitely, I'm very curious because I have no idea what you think of it, Will Ashton. And it's a movie that I really loved. I really got a kick out of this week, and that's Assassination Nation. So this is it's being dubbed a black comedy thriller. I would not really call it that. I'd call it like a psychological action horror, but that doesn't really cover the entire movie, which we've talked about it on the show before. One of my favorite things is when a movie can't be pegged by labels, and that's kind of, in a way, what Assassination Nation is. This one was written and directed by Sam Levinson, actually the son of Barry Levinson. Stars Odessa Young, Suki Waterhouse, Hari Neff, the performer named Abra, and quite a few others, including Maud Apatow and Joel McHale and Bella Thorne. And so this one premiered at Sundance. This is another Sundance favorite that played at the midnight. I know we mentioned Alex Billington before. This is one of his favorite movies of the year. I think it is his favorite movie of the year.
Oh, really?
I think so. I think he said that at one point. This one comes to us from Neon and Refinery 29 and a few others. And I really appreciate Neon. I think Neon is always putting out movies that I think are avant-garde and make you uncomfortable, and they don't always click for me. The last one that really did was probably Green Room. I think that was a Neon run, right?
No, that was A24.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Neon was Ingrid Goes West was Neon. I, Tonya was Neon. Trying to think what else came out recently of high note that was Neon, but those are two that come to mind for me.
Maybe.
No, that was something else, I think. But
right.
That would have been fitting, if only.
If only. I would say that about Ingrid Goes West. I was a big fan of Ingrid Goes West. A little bit more than I, Tonya, looking back now.
It definitely is, yeah.
Even though I think I, Tonya is a pretty good movie, I think Ingrid Goes West had much more of an impression on me. But that said, so this film takes place in a fictional location called Salem. It's okay. The messaging is not subtle in this movie.
No, it is not.
It is not, and there's a point to it. But yeah, it is a fictional location, and basically a bunch of people in this town get all of their search history hacked, and it starts to ruin people's lives. People's secrets start to get exposed to the public, and just all hell slowly and also quickly breaks loose. And at the center of it are these four best friends, played by Odessa Young and Suki and Hari and Abra. They're four best friends who, really just they're very indifferent to what's going on, a little bit irreverent, but also kind of looking at the situation and getting sucked into a black hole of chaos and violence and just unapologetic action. This is the kind of movie that starts with some like voiceover narration, so you kind of feel like, oh man, it's almost like a YA sort of thing, and it quickly gives off this impression of like, no, the movie you're about to watch is highly intense, very much going to be offensive, and there's
trigger warnings.
I was going to say, yeah, there's a montage of trigger warnings that's in the trailer, and it gives you a pretty good rundown of some of the most like, really some of the like the most glaring, edgy, like shock value moments that happen throughout this movie.
Watch the trailer and you'll see what happens.
Exactly. I adore this film. I think that it is rough around the edges, but I love it for that. I think that it's epic. It's a long movie, and I think the whole thing is both cathartic and powerful at the same time. Like there was something challenging about it. There was something that made me feel like I was getting really plugged into the pulse of like what society feels like right now. It just doesn't pull its punches. Like I respect it so much for going all the way with its premise, and for obvious reasons, people have compared this to The Purge, all the Purge movies, and you know, people that I know that some people like still like the Purge movies a lot and like this one. I think one critic in particular is Candace Frederick. She loves this film, but she doesn't hate it on the Purge. She puts these on like the same level. My only disagreement is I just don't see any of the Purge movies that I've seen at least really pushing this premise all the way. So that's where I'm at. I'll talk more about it, but Ashton, I'm really curious to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, so I saw this last night, and I was talking about it with my friend who I saw it with, and I'm glad we're going to be talking about it now, because I think I'm still digesting it. Like, I'm still trying to figure out exactly how I feel on it. At this point in time, I don't know what grade I'm going to give it, so I'm going to kind of figure it out as we go along.
Don't you love it? Don't you love it when a movie just kind of that's kind of part of my love for it, is I was kind of in the same boat like right after seeing it. I was like, I don't know if I hated that or loved it, and I don't know. I love it when movies do that.
Well, I'm neither. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. I think it works. I agree with you. It has the courage of its convictions. I think that's safe to say. It knows what it wants to say, and I think it says mostly what it wants to say. I don't know if I agree exactly with everything, how it exactly says what it wants to say, if that makes sense.
I think so, but it's tough because we can't go into specifics.
Okay, so I'll dig into stuff I do like. I think the performances across the board are really good. The main actress, is it Odessa Young? Yeah. She's fantastic. I think this is one of the best performances of the year.
This is a great showcase for her.
Yeah, it's a tremendous performance.
It's rivaled only by Hari Neff, who plays Bex, who is the transgender character.
Yeah, she's great too. And I kind of wish the 4 central dynamic characters were given more to do, because those 2 characters are well developed, but the other 2 friends, I don't really know anything about them, like who they were, or like not much about them besides some kind of off-color jokes is really developed.
Yeah. I think that's part of the point, though, is that what I like is that the movie isn't trying to like pretend like everybody has like a full character arc in this. Like you do sort of see like these are the 2 characters who are kind of at the center of like more focus is put on them, and the other characters are really just supportive friends who kind of get caught up in this. And I thought that was a little bit true to life. Like not everybody has like these crazy, wild, things going on in their lives, because then it probably would have made this movie feel, in my opinion, a little bit too clunky and a little bit like it's trying to do too much almost.
That's not exactly what I'm saying, but I think we're kind of on the same page here. I think so. It is fair to say, like you're suggesting, the movie is very meta. It talks about like if this were a movie, so and so, which I found kind of grating, but I get what it's trying to do, and I don't think it's the worst example of that kind of trope. But I think I disagree, because I think the movie, it leads up to like, this isn't really a spoiler. It says like how like this is how like a coal town like wanted to go on a murderous rampage against like 4 teenagers. And you're kind of seeing like that like bond, and I think if they had developed those other 2 characters, that would have made the bond even stronger. Does that make sense now? Like I think,
I guess we don't disagree that like it could have been stronger. I guess I just was very taken by the moments they do have where they're all just sitting around like talking to each other. it's very like whenever there are a lot of shots that spend a lot of time just focusing on all four of them, just like bantering with each other. And I guess for me, that was enough to really buy them as like best friends who'll stick together. But I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying in the idea of like, if you could have had maybe some subplots or something that between certain characters, so you have a little bit more of an investment in like each one. I definitely think that's a pretty fair criticism, because there are moments where you're like, what's that character's name again? Well, you don't have that problem with the two main leads.
Especially considering that Suki Waterhose and Odessa Young look fairly similar to each other. Like they have very similar kind of appearance to each other, or maybe that's just me.
I think that's just you.
Really? I don't know. I thought they both. I mean, I guess
just
they're
think
both
all white teenagers in Salem look the same.
No, don't put words in my mouth, please. I think it's more just because they didn't really develop Suki's character. But as it stands, I mean, and also I want to say, I think this is the first time Bella Thorne has given a performance that was decent. So
that's one way to put it. It is something. Yeah,
I mean, she's not
like
that much, but I mean,
she's not, but she makes it count. You know, the moment that she has one moment that really sets, like there's a scene involving her that really sets the tone for the second half of the movie, and a part of her performance, like kind of halfway into the first act, really just it's a perfect setup to an emotion the movie wants you to have. Which is like one of like conflictedness and things like that. So I would say, so she's also in that Babysitter movie on Netflix, right?
Yeah, I don't think she's that great in that.
I didn't see that. Yeah, so I wasn't sure what you thought.
I mean, she's a little better in that, but yeah. Anyway, I don't mean to make this the put down Bella Thorne hour, but anyway, and I will also say, I mean, Joel McHale, he plays against type very, very much.
Oh yeah.
I'm actually kind of surprised he took on this role. Considering his brand, but I mean, he took a risk. I'll give him that. I don't really know how I feel about that performance on the whole, but I think so this is where I'm kind of getting conflicted, I guess. I think it's well directed. I think there are a lot of well shot moments. I think the acting is great. I really like the way the movie looks, and I was gripped throughout. Where I just feel like the ending was very rushed, I guess. I was waiting for that big, moment where like they go against the town. And I was kind of hoping that would be like the second half of the film. And there's a moment involving a shovel where it seems like, okay, this is the moment where things take that turn. You know what I mean? Like it takes like, okay, now we're going in that direction. But it doesn't. I mean, it goes
kind of does.
Back.
I don't know. I feel like you're faulting it for taking its time, though, and that's interesting.
No. Well, here, hang on. What I'm trying to say is, there's that moment there's that organic moment where it could make that turn. And then it goes to the point where like it puts women in like a very like in danger a lot, like basically a montage of women in danger in these horrific situations. And a point where I start to wonder, like, is this too much? Like, I think by that point, it kind of made that point already. And maybe, I don't know, I guess this is where I'm kind of having the conflicted feelings.
I guess that's where we disagree, because I don't think it had made that point yet. I think that, because I honestly, I was having that exact sensation where I was a little bit like, when are we going to get to the part where the righteous indignation? I was waiting for that, and I felt like it was taking too long to get there. But I think the difference for me was like when it ended, I was like, that's exactly the way it needed to go. It had to sort of bring you all the way down to like the all is lost moment almost, in order for me to fully appreciate what exactly happens. And I get what you're saying, that it isn't sort of this like furious 30-minute like cathartic fest, but I think that's kind of what I think I needed to see, not exactly what I wanted to see, because it was a little bit more. I don't think the message was that like these women just spending 30 minutes like making you feel better about how you feel about this movie. I don't think that would have been good. I think that would have been not having the courage of its convictions. And so I think it's wrapped up in like the scenes that do kind of take its time to get you there are, so there's a one shot in here, or one take, that I thought was, at first great, I thought it was gratuitous, and then I was like, this really the way it's selling me. Yeah, and
it's very, very impressive. I mean, like the way they shot that was very impressive from a directorial standpoint.
I was continuously like impressed by some of the like stylistic decisions with this. Like there were just some very good like there were just some really innovative directing techniques that I was kind of taken aback almost by how many times in this movie I was like, man, this is like a really cool trick, like that you don't see a lot, and you definitely don't see it executed in a certain way, like certain characters overlapping certain scenes, some split screen moments, and like just really good moments that are worth analyzing. And that's all I've really got on that. I think the movie does work, but I think it takes a lot of work to get onto the movie's playing field. And so I don't look at this movie and say, like, if you don't like it, you're ridiculous or anything like that. I think it's polarizing. I think people are going to hate it, and that just makes me love it all the more.
Sure. I mean, generally, I do agree with you, and I will say, it's not for everyone. I don't think this is the type of movie that's going to appeal to everyone. I'd say, like we said before, watch the trailer if you think that's not my thing. There's no shame in that. I mean, it's definitely not going to be a film that's going to make everyone happy. So, but yeah, I guess I'm thinking as I'm talking, and so I don't know. I still that third 3/4 mark is still where I feel like I don't know if I really agree with how they approach that. Especially the way it lingers on like the violence of women. I know it's what it's trying to do, and I know we're going to get to that point where they, rally up and take it. I just don't know if it was really worth like seeing like 20 minutes of that. I don't know if I just don't think
I get what you're saying. I totally get what you're saying. And I literally had the same thoughts. So I don't fault you at all for feeling not uncomfortable, but like sort of
it's not about
feeling
uncomfortable. It's about, I mean, did it need to do that?
Right.
Like, to accomplish its goal.
That's more what I mean. It's like it sounds more like you're kind of questioning, the way the camera like lingers on certain scenes and the pain of certain characters. I totally get that. Yeah, and I think we can leave it at that. I think that this is a movie that you can't really have a full opinion of just a couple of days after seeing it. Sure. I have a feeling that you and I might be talking about this movie in a year from now completely differently. Who knows?
Yeah, which makes it a success. I mean, that ultimately is a sign of success. If I'm still thinking and talking about this movie, past the day I've seen it. I mean, I saw a movie that morning that I was telling John we'll talk about next week, but I almost completely forgot about it. And this movie, right. I won't be forgetting about this movie. So that's a testament to Sam Levingston's sophomore film. But yeah, even though I'm going to grade it, I don't know if I am like cemented in that grade, but
this is such a good example of like what you were saying though, like the discussion around it is much more important than the grade.
Right.
100%.
Sure. Yeah. So, you give your grade first and I'll kind of come around my grade I'm on.
I was a B+ on this, and then the end credit scene has a message that is just perfect. There's this whole statement that the movie makes about art after chaos that I was like, yeah, this is an A-. I think it's a must-see. Now, it's a must-see with the stipulation that I think it's something that everybody should go see. I don't think it's something that everybody's going to, or I don't think it's something that everybody's going to see, and I don't think it's something that's appropriate for everyone. And I think there's a big difference between those things. I do think, though, that if you really are looking for a cultural watershed, this is it. And I also think that this movie's how do I put this? I guess I just think that I want to make it clear that when I saw the trailer, I was very hesitant to go see this. I kind of wasn't sure that this wasn't going to be my bag because I'm not quite into the like gross out stuff. Not that this movie is all that graphic or anything like that. But
yeah, the shock value.
The shock value stuff, it's not something that always really works for me. So I kind of, opposite to what you were saying before, Will, I wasn't kind of going into this being like, yes, this is what I want. This is my most anticipated movie of the year.
Well, that's not how I went in.
Right, but, sure. But I think some people are, and I think that I just want to be super clear that the trailer didn't sell me. What sold me was word of mouth, and I'm glad it did because that was what got me into it, and I'm glad that I did. And it took some work, but I kind of got to what this movie was trying to do, and so I'm A-. And then what about you, Will?
Yeah. So yeah, I think I basically agree with your general thoughts on the film. And I will say, I don't know. I mean, I do have to wonder though, if this was directed by a woman, if it would have worked better. I don't know for sure, but there's a part of me that wonders that, and I don't know if that's I don't know. I mean, that's just me speculating. I don't know for sure if that would have made it better. I have to imagine it would, because I think it would have been better about like making some of the stuff more sensitive, but also driving home that same point. But I don't know. As it stands, I don't know. It kind of reminds me of this book I'm reading right now. I'm reading Chuck Palahniuk's Adjustment Day, which is also kind of tackling these very relevant discussions in a way that's like if we're led to anarchy, like how does that happen, and like what who is right and who's in the wrong, and it's definitely an interesting conversation. I'm glad we had this conversation, and I'm glad that this movie provided it for us. I do think ultimately because of that, I'm going to give it a B. I think it accomplishes what it wants to do for the most part, and I think it's a movie that is worth seeing, and I think a lot of people are going to get something out of it, and it's certainly understandable why this was like the big, like the one that got like 10 million from Sundance, or like someone paid $10 million to acquire this film, a bidding war and all that. Like it's definitely a film that it's very much in the now. It's very much a film that's tackling very modern questions and very relevant stuff. Whether it accomplishes everything it wants to do as well as it could have, I don't know, but I think it was worth seeing, and so I feel that a lot of people are going to get a lot out of it. So yeah, I feel pretty comfortable, I think, right now saying a B.
All right, that's a B from Will, A- from me. Go check it out and let us know what you think of it. I'm very curious to keep hearing what people think, because I'm always fascinated by just the difference of reviews, and I love it. I think that it is one of those movies that I feel like I'm going to learn I'm going to learn a lot about it, not just from seeing it again, but also really studying how people are reacting to it. And so that's why I again really love this conversation, because I think that it was interesting to me how you and I had a lot of the same moment of thoughts going on, especially in that third act. So that's really cool. Okay, that's Assassination Nation. This next film is Life Itself. We don't got to spend a lot of time on this. I know Maverick wants to get to Bojack Horseman season 5.
Oh, that's me. I'm like threatening you from across the table. Hurry up.
That's right. But yeah, I mean, the movie came out, and I think we should definitely mention it. We should definitely give it its due. I haven't had a chance to see it. I have a feeling I probably shouldn't, but I'm probably going to anyway. What is it, and what's it about? What's up?
Oh boy.
What's up?
So this is the sophomore film from writer-director Dan Fogelman, who he has a pretty established career at this point. He's actually as a writer, he worked on Bolt. I think he worked on Tangled. I think he was involved with Cars 1, maybe Cars 2. Is that right, John?
I think just one of the Cars movies.
Yeah, so he's involved with Disney, and then as a screenwriter, he established himself through, I think, Crazy Stupid Love was probably his big calling card as a writer, and then as show creator, that success came from This Is Us, the NBC program, which has received no shortage of accolades. It's very it's a melodrama through and through, but it seems like a lot of people would like it or find themselves weeping at its emotional prowess.
Yeah. Before you go on, sorry, I just want to be super clear. So I double checked. He was a writer for Cars. Yes. He helped a little bit with the story on Cars 2. I don't think he was really like a credited writer, especially because that film had so many changes following up. So I just want to make that super clear.
No, thank you. Yeah, I think he also did Fred Claus and License to Wed, and did he have 4 Christmases? Or maybe I'm just thinking of.
I don't think he did License to Wed. I don't see that here. He did.
Okay.
So I have it all here. He did Cars, Fred Claus, Bolt, Tangle. These are all writings. Crazy Stupid Love, The Guilt Trip, Las Vegas, and he produced Me and Earl and the Dying Girl. He directed and wrote Danny Collins, as you mentioned.
It's a good movie. Danny Collins is a good film.
Haven't seen it.
Yeah, it's actually one of the better Twilight period Al Pacino movies.
Huh, that's interesting.
Or at least as far as his performance is concerned.
I've always wanted to see it because I know Ryan Adams did the music, and Ryan Adams is just my guy.
I mean, it's like a solid B movie. Like it's like B minus. Like it's not like earth shattering, but it's well done for what it is. It's
putting
definitely
it on the list
for Al Pacino. But anyway, so we all build up to this movie, which is, I think, the antithesis of the self-involved, like I hate to use this word, but fairly pretentious writer who like has like these big grand ideas. Literally, the movie is called Life Itself.
Right. And
he has this blank check.
That's Roger Ebert's.
Yeah, which makes me mad about this movie because that's a great documentary.
Yeah.
And now I have to be like, no, not the movie with Olivia Wilde, or Oscar Wilde, whatever, or Oscar. Isaac,
You had it right.
Yeah.
Olivia. You have Olivia Wilde, Olivia Cook, Oscar Isaac. So you got some similar sounding names there.
Yeah, big cast. Mandy Patinkin's in it. Antonio Banderas.
Maya
a lot of people
Zorro,
in this movie.
Annette
And
Bening's
I
in
can
this.
show you, like, so anyway, that's my point. Like, it's this big movie. Like, it's this blank check, basically. Like, he has this leverage in Hollywood where he's like proven himself as a writer.
Mm-hmm.
He has proven himself as a showrunner and stuff. And he's like, okay, what's your big idea? It's like, well, strap down, listen to this. And so I don't even know how to describe this movie. That's kind of why I'm going around it, because I don't. The plot of this movie, it's like so hard to like say what it is without getting into outright spoilers. But I guess the best, most general way I can describe it is, so there's Oscar Isaac and Olivia Wilde, and they met in college, and they formed a relationship together. She's pregnant, like basically 9 months pregnant with their child, and like everything seems happy, but there are these therapy sessions with Annette Bening where Oscar Isaac is like bearded and very depressed. He went to like therapy, and it's like something happened. Like, what happened between them? And I can't say more than that, because it's, if you watch This Is Us, you know, like a lot of stuff's gonna like kind of go back and forth in time and stuff, and we're gonna figure out the answer, and it's very twisty and turny and stuff. And as it's going on, there's also Olivia Cooke, who is the daughter of Oscar Isaac and Olivia Wilde, like 21 years in the future.
Kind of inspired casting when you think about it.
Yeah, they do quite a bit look like what their child would be, I guess. She does look like the child, I guess, of Olivia Wilde.
And she has the acting skill that I would expect as the daughter of Oscar Isaac and Olivia Wilde.
Yeah, and also like I don't even know if I can really say more, but Antonio Banderas is also like this other subplot. I can't really say because it gets into spoilers, but yeah. So it's like these kind of like three things are covering over each other, kind of the same like This Is Us. I haven't really watched the show, but from what I know, like there's like these three hovering subplots, and they do mingle together in this very contrived, convoluted way. As it stands, I really don't know if this is going to appeal to anyone. Like even the audience of This Is Us, I think is going to be turned off by this movie because it's very front loaded. I guess like it's very much like, this is like going to be the most important movie you've ever seen. Like this kind of like mentality of like, this is bold, imaginative filmmaking, and you are going to be in awe of its grace. And I know it's not saying that directly, but that's how it feels like. It's like that kind of like very masculine, like that.
I think that's right.
Guy who is a showrunner for in BoJack this season for Phil Bird. It feels like that guy is directing this movie. Yeah, Flip. It feels like the movie Flip would direct if he was given a movie.
Almost feels like this movie exists in the BoJack universe.
Yeah, it definitely feels like that. And that's not to say anything about Dan Fogelman, who I think actually is a fairly sweet, good-natured person. But for the sake of this movie, like that's just the impression I get from watching
you can't deny that his work has had an impact on people. I think This Is Us is a kind of a cultural, like monument right now. Yeah. Like people love that show. Like people have had visceral reactions to that show, very positive ones, I should say. So we shouldn't diminish his work or like the effect his work has had on like current audiences.
So I guess basically imagine like the plot of like one season of This Is Us like scrunched into a 2-hour film, and then that film is essentially Amores Porres, the Ingaratu movie. Have you seen that one, Maverick?
No, I don't think so.
Sorry. Have you seen it, John?
Amores what?
Amores Porres, this first movie. My Spanish is not good, but AMORESPERROS.
Amore Perros.
Okay, there you go. It's that film. Have you not seen that film?
No, haven't seen it.
Oh, it's really good. You should check that out.
All right.
Anyone should. I mean, it's a really good movie. Especially if you like, Birdman and The Revenant.
Which I don't. Well, that's the thing. You know that I'm not a big fan of Inarritu. So like,
really?
I do like the cast. Like I think Gael Garcia Bernal's in this, and obviously I loved him from Coco. But yeah, this movie just has never been on my radar. It came out, like when I was like what was this, like early 2000s?
Probably, yeah.
I don't know.
It's a movie. I mean,
but if you say it's great, maybe it's the Inarritu movie I'm gonna love. I don't know.
I mean, it's not like his other ones in the sense that like it's not like wizardry, like camera work and stuff like that. It's very grounded and like emotionally focused.
Oh, so it chooses substance over flashy style. I'm in.
Yeah.
Sorry. But anyway, you know how I feel about Birdman.
Yeah. So basically, imagine that movie directed in the style of This Is Us, and that director is an alien who doesn't know how human emotions work. And he's like, how do we make people cry? They cry when really sad stuff happens. So just do a bunch of really sad stuff. That doesn't really make sense. Like how this happens. It's sad, so that'll work. And it's like, well, I need someone who actually knows what filmmaking is. So he gets that burnout guy who's like 20 and like keeps talking about Tarantino movies at parties.
So Flip?
He's like, yeah. So like, hey, can you help me like polish the script out? Like, sure. Can you talk a lot about Quentin Tarantino? You know, he's like the master of cinema these days. Like, okay, sure. We'll put references to that. That's something that people can relate to. And
Sam Noland is going to listen to this and get so mad at you, Will Ashton, because...
Well, I mean, I'm not disrespecting Quentin Tarantino. I'm disrespecting...
It sounds like you're disrespecting Quentin Tarantino fans.
I'm sorry. I mean, well, I'm talking about a very specific Quentin Tarantino fan, to be clear.
Sure.
Like,
yes. Just
the one who's like watches like 5 movies a year and 2 of those are Fight Club.
Yeah, I think that clears it up perfectly. Thank you.
Yeah, that guy. He helped write the script with the alien, and they were making Amores Boris with in the style of This Is Us, and that's what Life Itself is. And I can't say more about the plot, but just watch it because it's insane. It's a crazy movie in the sense that like you think that this is what people want as far as like a melodrama. Like it's not. I don't know. I'm just gonna give it a C-. I can't say more. I'm talking.
This movie really got to you, Will. It just sounds like it really had an effect, or like not a good one.
I just feel bad because I have to keep talking around it because I can't talk about this.
Yeah.
Like even if I talked about like 5 minutes into the movie, it's a spoiler. So
yeah,
I can't say more than that. I feel bad because like he actually Dan Fogelman is from my area. I think I mentioned this last week. He is like literally in the suburb I'm from in Bethel Park, and my aunt was like his babysitter and stuff. So he's like. He's like a homeboy, and like I wanted this movie to be really good for that sake, but it is not.
So you're shilling for Dan Fogelman. You would have given this movie an F, but you have to give it a C- because he's your friend.
Okay. The reason I give it a C- is because I think
obviously
the acting
I'm joking. Everybody.
But,
I said I just want to make it very obvious. I'm joking.
No, but I think I should clarify because like I think the acting is generally really good. Like I think Antonio Banderas in particular is very good. Mandy Patinkin's very good. Olivia Cooke, as we were saying, is very good in this film. I just wish the script was better and that it wasn't so self-grandizing, I guess. And so, I mean, but I kind of want people to see it, just see how crazy it is. It's definitely, I mean, the comparisons that have been made is that it's this year's Collateral Beauty / Book of Henry, and I think that's apt. In the sense that it's like this like movie with a bunch of celebrities that like it's meant to be like this big tear-jerking, crowd-pleasing awards film, and it's not going to be that. It's just very miscalculated and misguided, and I think there's going to be a sick pleasure derived from that. But at the same time, I don't know if I could recommend it on the merits of it being a good film in any stretch of the imagination. So that's Life Itself.
Well, once again, Will Ashton, you're not alone. It's 13% on Rotten Tomatoes. Only 80 reviews, though. Average rating is 3.8 out of 10. And 21 out of 100 on Metacritic. Definitely, most of the reviews I've seen have said that it just is kind of amazing how the movie is so overwrought, yet at the same time so underwhelming.
Overwrought is a generous word for it.
Yeah, I saw your tweet about that. So that's Life Itself. Let's move on quickly. Oh, that was a tough one. It sounded like it was tough for you to review, but let's talk about Bojack Horseman. Season 5. We brought it up last week. We hadn't seen all the episodes yet. Will, I think you're still a couple episodes away from finishing the 5th season, so we're not doing any spoilers. No spoilers or anything, but Maverick, you know, when we talked last week, you had seen like most of the season. Now you finished it. Mm-hmm. Where are you at with Bojack season 5?
I mean, you could just play the recording I said last week and it would work just as good here. And I mean that like passion, like that's a good thing. Okay. And that's because the show is, I was telling John, I think right now, and this might be a bit of a bold statement, but right now I think Bojack is for me, like at this point in this time of my life, what Avatar: The Last Airbender was for me when I was a kid, as far as like, it's tackling things and it's saying things for me. Right. And it's helping me go, yeah, I do hate that. Or I do like not like that this is happening. And like, I didn't know that was bothering me this much. Or I didn't know that I was passionate about this. Or I didn't know I felt this way or process things this way. And I think that says a lot about a show. If it can help you voice things creatively, and if it can help you feel things that you might have a hard time feeling, right? I've been watching a ton of emotional movies this week, so I've been kind of on a roller coaster. But Bojack is the staple, and I just love this show, and I'm so happy that I'm watching it. And I wish I was 500 episodes long, so I didn't have to stop after one day of binging.
It's the typical Bojack formula, right? Where the midway episode is the very innovative one that everyone's talking about. There's the political episode that everybody's like talking about from that lens. And then there's the finale stuff that nobody's talking about because they don't want to spoil anything, but it's the one that kind of goes bonkers. Yeah. So I'm kind of curious because I've been trying to think of like where I see this fit in with the other seasons. And I have a feeling this will be one of the seasons that's looked at as the most underrated. Like when we look back and we're like all of the Bojack seasons, I think this is the one where people are going to really look at it and say, that was a really good one that doesn't get the credit it deserves almost because it isn't quite as flashy. Like it's an innovative episode.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think the content's just as important and just as hard hitting as it's always been. Yeah. But yeah, it's definitely not as flashy as like last season, right? Where we get these big dramatic, he goes to different places and he's doing this thing, New Mexico, and then we've got
it doesn't have the huge plot twist like the last season does, the one that's like really devastating. I think this is better than the most previous season, but I think it kind of rivals season 3, which is very impressive. So Will, you have a
No, I was just gonna say I think intentionally is very LA central because it's talking about a lot of stuff that's happening just in Hollywood right now, not only as far as like where the entertainment industry is going, but how it's reckoning with a lot of stuff. So that's all I was gonna say. I mean, I can't say anything too definitive because I still need to check out those last 3 episodes. But I mean, Bojack is Bojack. I can't imagine myself not loving it. But I mean, this season I do think is. I mean, there's so many episodes in this season that I would consider like among my favorites. I mean, Free Chiro is I think like top 5 worthy.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much I can say about it, but it's just basically it's almost like a play. Like it's like 2 like separate extended monologues. And just Bojack kind of dealing with like the familial grief of what's going on, just kind of like the cyclical nature of how messed up his life is, and in a way that's like prophetic, but also fairly bittersweet and well-natured and heartfelt, and also very dark and depressing. And I think it just kind of sums up Bojack in a nutshell. But yeah, I mean, there's so much. I mean, I just watched this morning the Halloween episode.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, it's so good. And it's mostly centered around Mr. Peanut Butter, who I sometimes think can get overlooked in the scheme of things. Like even this season, he kind of like, with the exception of that episode, from what I've seen, he's kind of like in the background a lot. Like
well, he gets a lot of good. They joke about that, the fact that he's in the background. It's almost like he doesn't exist.
Right. Yeah.
Like, I mean, generally that's like Todd that's usually kind of just like creeping. I think like last season that was like he's like the kind of central character that was like they didn't really 100% know what to do with him at times. But this season definitely, I think it's really good about balancing out like the core conflicts of every character. At least one episode is devoted to the 4 or 5 central characters.
Yeah.
And just exploring their headspace and their lives and just how they're kind of dealing with it.
Would you say it does for Todd though in this? I don't think there was one for Todd. I guess
that's true. I mean, I
think Peanut Butter, Carolyn, Diane, and Bojack each have their own thing.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. I mean, Todd's like forever in B-plot land.
Yeah.
Like even to the point where they call that out.
Well, no, Todd does have that. I don't know how much we can say about it, but he does have one episode where it's like half the episode is him.
Yeah, he had, but I think even then it was still considered a B plot, right?
It was very much, yeah.
I want to say, go ahead.
You're not talking about the hand one, right?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I know which one you're referring to. But one last thing I'll say is that I think Henry Fondle is their best gag character since what was his name? The tall guy or the Vincent Adult Man?
Vincent Adult Man.
Quite
best character in the show.
Oh my goodness, it still is the best character. But I think that Henry Fondle is just a really great rival for second place. Mm-hmm. I was rolling every time they did a whole bit with that character.
Which character is this?
Henry Fondle.
He's the.
I don't think you've gotten to because you still haven't finished it. But you've probably gotten to it, but you haven't.
See,
gotten
in
to
the last back few episodes, like at past 10.
He's showed up by the time you're watching.
Yeah, you've seen him. You probably just haven't seen him as what he is yet.
Yeah, you'll get there. Sorry for kind of setting
That's
your
okay.
expectations a little bit.
Gives me something to look forward to beyond the promise of more Bojack.
Yeah. Okay, that's Bojack Horseman. We all love the show. We all encourage people to check it out. We've talked a lot about it. One last thing, I'm not really going to get into detail, but another Netflix show I'm starting to watch. Maybe I'll talk about it more next week. Is The Good Cop. This is, and I'm only bringing it up because I want to know what more people think of it. Sorry, what?
Is it better than The Bad Cop?
It's better than The Good Doctor, maybe. Not as good as The Good Dinosaur, but
not as good as The Good Place, I guess.
It's not even close to The Good Place, The Good Wife, The Good Fight.
The Good Wife, right? Yeah.
Yeah, all of those are much better. The Good Cop is so fascinating to me, though. So it is a cop procedural that Netflix is doing. That, you know, it follows a lot of the beats of the cop procedurals, but its cast is the most interesting thing about it. The two leads are Josh Groban and Tony Danza. As a father and son, Tony Danza plays this cop who went to jail on corruption charges. So he's like a dirty cop. And he's one of the main characters. Yeah. And his son, by contrast, is the good cop. Josh Groban plays this very like teetotaler, always follows the rules. Just, you know, he's just like squeaky clean, professional, you know, kind of cop who just views everything as white in the black and white world. And so that's kind of their dynamic. There's a sweetness to this show. There's an interesting format and structure to it, and I think it lives and sometimes dies on the two leads being so mismatched. You buy that there's a history between these characters, but it's so light despite its subject matter. It is kind of like that typical cop procedural, but it's very different from what you would see on a network show, which is kind of why I'm still watching it. I'm a few episodes in. I'll check in maybe next week with how I feel, but if you just kind of want the lighter fare that Netflix has to offer, something that just doesn't go to any like real extremes, it really is just sort of like a breezy, watch it with your friends and family kind of show. It really doesn't have a lot of like difficult subject matter. It's not, at the same time, I don't want to make it sound like it's like Full House or something. It's not family friendly necessarily, but you know, as far as these things go, I think that I think that it is kind of fascinating to see an actual Josh Groban performance like this, because obviously he's more well known for his singing, and yeah, the opening credits are actually kind of innovative and interesting, and they're him singing, but you know, because he's one of the best singers alive right now. So I would say that, and I am interested to see his talents put into this, and I'm not off board. I'm kind of digging it in a very guilty pleasure kind of way at the moment. So that's The Good Cop. If it sounds interesting at all to you, I watched it out of morbid curiosity, and I haven't been very disappointed yet. I don't think it's a bad show. But I don't know if it's good. So who knows? Okay, that's all of our mini reviews. Let's close out the show real quick. Next week we have three wide releases coming out. We have Smallfoot, which all three of us have already seen. Smallfoot is the new animated film from Warner Brothers, Warner Animation Group, and it's directed by Carrie Kirkpatrick. We might be having an interview with Carrie Kirkpatrick coming out. The plan is, anyway, that we're going to be able to do a whole interview with the director that we'll be releasing on Cinemaholics. So hopefully that happens, and you'll be able to listen to that. It's interesting because all three of us have seen it, and not to get ahead of ourselves, none of us have very strong opinions on it. So we're still trying to figure out what our featured review is going to be. We also have Night School, which is from Universal, and that's the like kind of just looks like a lowbrow comedy. It stars Kevin Hart and Tiffany Haddish. And then we have Hellfest from CBS Films, which is more of like the indie wide release, which is weird to say. And this is Gregory Plotkin's like basically it's just like a horror film that I definitely feels right at home for our mini reviews. But yeah, and then we have two limited releases, Monsters and Men and Old Man and the Gun. Both look very interesting, but we were kind of struggling a little bit to decide like which movie should we see, like which movie should we feature review. I think we'll definitely talk about Smallfoot in the mini reviews. Definitely talk about Hellfest. Hopefully we can catch Monsters and Men and Old Man and the Gun and all that too. But we actually had an interesting idea, and this is where the listeners come in. We're thinking about doing our featured review. This is Will Ashton's idea. Will, you suggested, and I think it's a good idea, to talk about Maniac. Maniac is a new show on Netflix. It's a miniseries. It's only 10 episodes long, and it stars Emma Stone and Jonah Hill. It's from Cary Fukunaga, and I'm very interested. I've waited to watch this, and we're thinking maybe that would be kind of an interesting thing to talk about next week, because it just sort of feels like the sort of like piece of entertainment that we'll have a very interesting discussion around, but it would be a little different than what we've done before. So if you're listening and we want you all to weigh in, let us know in the comments. We're going to be doing a Patreon poll. Your opinion really, really matters to us. We want to make sure we talk about the thing that you guys are most interested in, all of you. And that's all I really have to say about that. Anything to add, Will Ash?
Yeah, I mean, of the central wide releases, I think Maniac has gotten a lot more chatter than any of those, and I think that warrants it being discussed maybe more than these films. But I'm happy to talk about Smallfoot if that's what the listeners want, or Night School, or Hellfest. I mean, I don't really know much about Hellfest, but if that's what the listeners want, then we'll give it to them, whatever they want.
That's right. And remember, if you are a patron, that means we pay special close attention what the Patreons ask for us. So, and if you're interested in any of that, you can always go to our show notes. There's links to everything there. But with that, let's close out the show. I think we're ready to leave it up to all of you to vote. So if you love Cinemaholics, you want it to continue, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and Stitcher. Hang out with us on Facebook and Twitter. Links to our social pages are in the show notes. Our Twitter has changed because we're no longer with We Got This Covered. So make sure you check out what our new Twitter is. It's the same Twitter, but it's just like a different handle. So like the links don't work anymore. But we've already changed all of our episodes to have the right link now, so it should work. And if you have any questions, feedback, anything you want to send our way, you can email us anytime at cinemaholicspodcast@gmail.com. And with that, from the Internet California, I'm John Negroni.
From the Internet Pennsylvania, I'm Will Ashton.
From the broadband basement, I'm Maverick Hines.
See you next time.